Peace and blessings, everyone. Welcome to Spotlight. I'm Edjuenka, and we have a really important and informative program for you this evening. Of course, we have Sean Rose, reporter here at JTV, talking about the hot and important news that's making the headlines, stories that's making the headlines this week. Also, I have very important guest, former publisher of the Beacon newspaper, Linnell Abbott. We're going to be talking about the role of the media in society, particularly a democratic society. Also, later on, I'm going to have the three contestants vying for the Miss Earth BVI title. And of course, the Miss Earth BVI is has a slightly different goal as a pageant. It's going to be one where young ladies are vying for the title to make the people of the Virgin Islands aware of the importance of maintaining a good environment. We're going to be talking about their role in bringing awareness about environmental issues. So we are going to have a really great program. I want to go to my man, Sean. Sean, this has been a hot week. We've had a shooting in Long Look, and of course, condolences go out to the families of the young man that got gunned down in Long Look. And of course, that's the hot story this week. But also surrounding that story is the behavior of the media in reporting tragedy in certain instances, and instances like this one in particular. Rose, tell us about what's the hot news making the headlines this week.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Edjuenka. In fact, a number of things happened today in the House of Assembly during the 9th sitting. We had a $5 increase in passenger tax for persons traveling to the USVI, $10 now for residents and $15 for non-residents. And in addition to that, the Premier announced, in fact, he announced the first measure I just mentioned, and he also announced that there will be an amnesty on property tax, so persons can bring their property tax status up to date pretty much. But the area where I would like to focus on tonight, where the news is concerned, is pretty much close to home. It's almost an introspection. We are looking at the role of the media in contemporary society, and coming out of that shooting, the Francis shooting in East End, a number of malpractices, one would say, were recognized. And in some cases, the news sites have been in a verbal battle, pretty much, as they seek to identify who may be the ones that have crossed the line in terms of breaching the public's trust and the social responsibility that media organizations ought to have in respect to the posting of gruesome images, and also moving away from the fundamental basics of journalism. We've had a number of situations where, in some cases, some of the articles that we have observed have been pretty much crossing the lines of media. Of course, a media organization is supposed to be a mediation source. I know it is a very difficult line to walk, because there are times when subjectivity can easily erode objectivity. However, at the end of the day, it is our responsibility to ensure that rumor does not become news, that we focus on the facts and that we report on the facts. We allow our opinions to probably take center stage in our homes or in private conversations, but when we are actually getting our information out there, our private opinion and views should not be clearly and so distinctly observed, as we have had in some cases, and I'm sure the public can make their own judgments in that regard.
Yeah. Well, how important it is for us to focus on what the media publishes in its news, particularly regarding the photographs of a dead person or of a gruesome killing, as opposed to focusing on the actual crime. You know, the argument in the online sites has been that the community is got its priorities all mixed up. It's focusing on the photograph that has been published, and not focusing and not showing enough outrage at the actual incident itself.
Well, one can always agree that, and again, it's a very ticklish line because some of these statements can be very subjective depending on where you stand. However, at the end of the day, the media has a role to play, and that role is to report on facts. And therefore, we should focus on that aspect of any event, whether it's crime or reporting on something that takes place in the House of Assembly, or even if it's a domestic issue, or even if we are revealing information that is not known to the public in the case of an investigative piece. And at times, yes, we are going to shake the foundations, we are going to make some people uncomfortable, but when it comes to the posting of pictures, you have to bear in mind the emotional aspect of it, especially as it relates to children who are either reading or watching, or maybe in some cases actually consuming the product on their cell phones or on tablets and so forth. As for us as a television station, we must be cognizant of the fact that this can have severe emotional impact on children, especially during their impressionable years. 5 to 12 thereabout.
Some say that it perhaps is good to see the horror of crime so that the population can wake up and take a good look at what's happening around them, because many people seem to be apathetic to their environment, and we're so accustomed of death and destruction on the media, particularly international media, that we become desensitized to those types of events. And so we need to perhaps see the gruesome nature of these attacks closer to home in order for us to perhaps become active in helping to solve crime, assisting the police, or even trying to prevent crime ourselves in our community.
And too, because this is a very, very interesting debate, Edgerenka, and too, it can actually in reverse create a level of fear that even drives criminality to a higher level, and discourages people from coming forward to submit information or to provide information to the authorities to help solve crime. Because if you see the image that was placed or posted on the one news site right after the shooting, you would not want to witness or be a witness in any crime. Of course, that's highly subjective, you might say as well, but looking at that can strike fear in you. Of course, limited effects is one thing that has always been discussed in media as to whether or not seeing these images, whether on the news or in movies, especially through the work of Hollywood, and they have had some serious discussions on that, and being blamed for helping to drive crime in particular. We see the situation in the US now with a number of young people, children in fact, having access to guns. And in some circles, they're arguing that in an event, they're seeing that in cartoons, they're seeing that on movies or via movies. So them having the actual gun in their hand is not necessarily the main cause.
Well, it's certainly an interesting debate, an interesting discussion. I was on a basketball court yesterday playing with some kids, and a little 15-year-old kid said to another little 15-year-old kid, they had an argument about the basketball, and it deteriorated into a real personal argument, and they got angry. And one little boy said to the other little boy, "I will kill you." Just like that. And in my ears, it sounded very serious. It wasn't like he wasn't joking at all. And so I said to myself, that this is they themselves are desensitized as kids, and they feeling like killing is really not a big deal. And I had to say, y'all need to stop that. There's no need for you to be talking to each other like that. It's only a game. But it just shows you what we are seeing on television, what we are seeing in the media, and the impact it's having on our society.
But one argument is, where is the emphasis on conflict resolution? Where is the emphasis on improving relations among everyone in the community? And why is there such an emphasis on posting images of that nature? In fact, that again speaks to the issue of ethics, because an organization, a media organization, ought not to use any situation simply to generate readership or listenership or viewership. You know, we have to maintain our integrity and focus on the fact that we are a media organization. But another thing, we should not also judge ourselves by the standards of Facebook and other information technology sources that are, for the most part, social, private. A media organization, if you are in fact a media organization, must operate by the standards that are set out for media organizations. And we have a number of cases to go by. We have the recently, the 1949 Commission on Journalism that was introduced and pretty much is used as a framework for all our media organizations around the world in democratic societies for the most part. And the Caribbean too has its own media organization, although all countries are not necessarily members. But for the most part, the culture is there, and we recognize what we ought to do and what we ought not to do. Look, as I leave you, the BBC had a recent scenario. They reported a situation that occurred in Syria where one of the rebels allegedly killed a combatant, and he apparently ripped out his heart and liver, and according to the news sources, was seen eating it now, or eating both the liver and the heart, or maybe biting. But at the end of the day, I can't tell you what the pictures look like because I didn't see them. Because as the BBC says, for obvious reasons, we cannot televise, that type of imagery. And for obvious reasons, no media house here in the Virgin Islands should publish or televise imagery of that nature that we have seen in recent days.
Well, certainly, Sean, thank you for that. The debate is going to continue, I'm sure, over the next few days until we come to a resolution. And it might very well be that we might have to develop a code of ethics here in the Virgin Islands. And there's a code of ethics all over the world when it comes to journalism. There are standards. And you mentioned the Commission of Freedom of the Press that came out after World War II when the media in the United States began to use their power in ways that was unbecoming a democratic society, and they either had to regulate themselves or the government had threatened to regulate them. So we are heading certainly in that direction based on the debate, and we certainly will see in the future what's going to come out of the behavior of the media, its role in the society, and its responsibility to bring good, accurate information to a public that needs to be informed so they can make meaningful, intelligent decisions. And of course, when we come back, I'm going to have with me a former publisher of the Beacon newspaper, Ms. Lynelle Abbott. She's been a publisher for over about 25 years, and we're going to be talking about the role of the media in a democratic society. Keep it locked right at the Spotlight. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors.
Spotlight is brought to you by the National Bank of the Virgin Islands, Clarence Thomas Limited, the BVI Tourist Board, and CCT Global Communications.
Welcome back to Spotlight. I'm Edgewenka, and we have a very, very interesting program this evening. We're going to be talking about the role of the press and the media in a democratic society. Now, quite a while back, around 1947, after World War II, one of a publisher of Time and Life magazines, Mr. Henry Luce, asked one of his friends, Robert Hutchins, the president of the University of Chicago, to recruit a commission to inquire into the proper function of the media in a modern democracy. And out of that discussion came the theory of social responsibility for the media. And this, of course, came out of the fact that the public looked at the press as publishers, as large publishers, as powerful and unpopular, when the public had a high degree of suspicion about the motivations and objectives of the press. It says the press had mushroomed into an unwieldy and powerful entity, and criticism of the Fourth Estate, which the press became known as, was widespread. Critics contended that the media had monopolistic tendencies, that corporate owners were not concerned with the rights of or interests of those unlike themselves, and that commercialization produced a debased culture as well as dangerously selfish politics. That was the result of that study, that commission. And out of that commission came a code of ethics, some guidelines. Guidelines were set up around two important ideas. The first guideline is that whoever enjoys a special measure of freedom, like a professional journalist, has an obligation to society to use their freedoms and powers responsibly. This guideline is useful so that people in power are able to be held liable in case their actions are not professional. People that have high media attention should not abuse the power. The second guideline that was established is society's welfare is paramount, more important than individual careers or even individual rights. Again, holding people responsible for their actions and stating that society is more important due to the vast number of people that could be affected by poor behavior. So the Hutchinson Commission added another 5 guidelines specifically for the press. Present meaningful news, accurate and separated from opinion. Serve as a forum for the exchange of comment and criticism and to expand access to diverse points of view. Project a representative picture of the constituent groups in society by avoiding stereotypes by including minority groups. Clarify the goals and values of society. Implicit was an appeal to avoid pandering to the lowest common denominator. And 5, last one, give broad coverage of what was known about society. All these guidelines are important because the press is needed to maintain a neutral viewpoint, providing the basic facts and allowing for readers to come up with their own opinions from the news that they report. And of course, these guidelines inspired what is now known as the Society of Professional Journalists. And the Society of Professional Journalists came up with a code of ethics for journalism, for journalists all over the world to adhere to and to follow. And this code of ethics is in effect up to this very day. And of course, the main mantra of the code is seek truth and report it. Seek truth and report it. The code also states that journalists should be honest, fair, and courageous in gathering, reporting, and interpreting information. And journalists should test the accuracy of information from all sources and exercise care to avoid inadvertent error. Deliberate distortion is never permissible. Diligently seek out subjects of news stories to give them the opportunity to respond to allegations of wrongdoing. Identify sources whenever feasible. The public is entitled to as much information as possible on sources' reliability. Always question sources' motives before promising anonymity. Clarify conditions attached to any promise made in exchange for information. Keep promises. Make certain that headlines, news, teasers, and promotional material, photos, video, audio, graphics, sound bites, and quotations do not misrepresent. They should not oversimplify or highlight incidents out of context. Never distort the content of news, photos, or video. Image enhancement or technical clarity is always permissible. Label montages and photo illustrations. You must label montages and photo illustrations. So if you use enhancement, you have to say that you have used enhancement of photograph or video. Avoid misleading reenactments or stage news events. If reenactment is necessary to tell a story, you must label it as a reenactment. Avoid undercover or other surreptitious methods of gathering information, except when traditional open methods will not yield information vital to the public. The use of such methods should be explained as part of the story. Never plagiarize. Tell the story of the diversity and magnitude of the human experience boldly, even when it is unpopular to do so. Examine their own cultural values and avoid imposing those values on others. avoid stereotyping by race, gender, age, religion, ethnicity, geographic, sexual orientation, geography, sexual orientation, disability, physical appearance, or social status. Support the open exchange of views, even views that they find repugnant. Give voice to the voiceless. Official and unofficial sources of information can be equally valid. Distinguish between advocacy and news reporting. Analysis and commentary should be labeled and not misrepresent fact or content. Distinguish news from advertising and shun hybrids that blur the lines between the two. Recognize and special obligation to ensure that the public's business is conducted in the open, that government records are open to inspection. Minimize harm. Ethical journalists treat sources, subjects, and colleagues as human beings deserving of respect. Journalists should show compassion for those who may be affected adversely by news coverage. Use special sensitivity when dealing with children and inexperienced sources or subjects. Be sensitive when seeking or using interviews or photographs of those affected by tragedy or guilt. Recognize that gathering and reporting information may cause harm or discomfort. Pursuit of the news is not a license for arrogance. Recognize that private people have a greater right to control information about themselves than do public officials and others who seek power, influence, or attention. Only an overriding public need can justify intrusion into anyone's privacy. Show good taste, avoid pandering to lurid curiosity, be cautious of identifying juvenile suspects or victims of sex crimes. Be judicious about naming criminal suspects before the formal filing of charges. Balance a criminal suspect's fair trial rights with the public's right to be informed. Those are some of the code of ethics, and it's a few more, but act independently, be accountable. It's a few more, but those are the standards, the international standards by which good journalism are being held. And so certainly we need to have a discussion on these standards and the role of the media and the press in a democracy, and we need to distinguish between the media and the press. I want to welcome my very special guest, Ms. Lynelle Abbott, former publisher of the BVI Beacon. She has a master's degree from Columbia University in journalism. Columbia University is one of the most prestigious universities in the United States, and I thought I must just say that. Hope I don't embarrass her, because she is a lady of high journalistic integrity and has been in the publishing business for approximately 25 years. Welcome to Spotlight. Good to see you. Yes. We need to define the media and the press.
Oh, sure. Well, as you noted there, typically or generally the words media and the press are used synonymously. And I think perhaps people don't understand that there's a real distinction between the two. Now, just for the public's information, the press the press is made up of those people that media establishments send out to gather the news. The people who show up for press conferences, functions, events, anything, or anywhere where they believe that news or information may be lurking, they're sent out to gather the news and to come back and write it and report it. They are the ones who are hired by the established media houses, if you will, and they are charged with exercising the same professionalism when they go out to gather this news. Now, it is, of course, up to the media houses who are doing the hiring and the assigning to ensure that they do have the ability and the professionalism they need in going out there in order to adhere to a lot of the code that you just read there, which is really, really essential for good journalism. Now, if you understand that, then you know that along with that then comes a great deal of responsibility on the part of the media. And so, of course, the media, you know, it's made up of several aspects or several areas. Newspaper, the print, the electronic, the social media now, and all those various aspects of it. And you begin to wonder, though, whether they have all been properly prepared for the seriousness of the job. And if some of what Sean Rose spoke about earlier today, if some of that is not really a result of perhaps not enough preparation.
So, okay, for first I need to make it clear in my mind, and of course the mind of the audience, the press are the people, the news gatherers, and they're usually known as journalists.
Right.
And the media is actually the producers, the owners of those means that produce the stories and put it out in the public domain.
Precisely.
Okay, that's I mean, I didn't know that. that's interesting. Now, you are looking into the community, and you are, of course, reading all sorts of information being put out by the media. And you're saying to yourself, as a professional and somebody who's been, had, you know, all this experience, that maybe the press, the gatherers, the journalists, are not as prepared as they need to be.
I am sensing that sometimes, and that could be real unfortunate, because then you do get some of what Sean was talking about. It's a matter of discretion, it's a matter of journalistic ethics, it's a matter of professionalism. But if they're just simply assigned and told to go out and get the story no matter what, then they're not perhaps paying as much attention as they need to the finer points of the profession.
And what that means, when you say they're not prepared, what are some of the things it looks like that they don't know?
Well, Sean mentioned in his report earlier about the gruesomeness of the photograph of the recent murder, was it?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Or
yes.
Killing,
mm-hmm.
whatever. And I think perhaps those are decisions that journalists will make on the spot, with journalists with cameras, equipped with cameras, and now we're talking about the television journalists, and they will make that decision on the spot, or perhaps their producers back in the studio. I mean, they can file it, but the producers don't necessarily have to show it, you know. But it's a matter of that walking that fine line and knowing when the boundaries are being overstepped in terms of the public's right to know. And I am a big champion of the people's right to know, but I'm also very sensitive to people's privacy. Now, you will get some people in public offices who are out there and still want to maintain their privacy. Well, they once they volunteer for public office, then they're no longer as private in some roles, and so the journalist then has to decide what is proper here. What is they have to know. The journalist on the spot has to know. For example, a few years back, I remember covering a tragedy up at Paraquita Bay, right outside HLSCC, in which there was, you know, the driver of the vehicle was burned, charred, and really, really awful. Well, I stayed there quite a while, gathering the information and taking pictures and all that. And just about towards the end of it, a police officer came over and insisted that I hand over my camera. And I I said, no. And, you know, he said, yes, you have to do that. Well, initially I thought of giving him a blank roll of film, but I thought, well, it wouldn't be nice to do that. So I just stayed there and argued a bit and then asked for his supervisor. And when the supervisor came, lo and behold, the supervisor knew that I had a right to do that. I had a right to take those pictures. I mean, it was in the public domain, and no, I was not going to print some of what I had seen, but he also had no right to confiscate my camera. Now, the journalist on the spot needs to know that, otherwise you just simply surrender.
But what about that judgment that you use to decide whether you're going to print that picture or you're not going to print that picture? Because I just read one of the code of ethics that said you have to be sensitive to publishing photographs that reflect tragedy and what impact that would have on the viewer. Is that something that's learned in journalistic school, or that's something that is decided by a media house up front, and the journalist is told that?
Well, I think in the course of training you do have some sensitivity training, and also, of course, it helps if you personally are a sensitive person. You sort of put yourself in the shoes of the family of the deceased, and what would they like? Now, the question you have to ask yourself, though, will any part, say, of that charred body that I was describing to you, will that in any way help the story and get across the message of the story? And you can decide, no, it does not. What you do need to focus in on is the cause of the accident, what caused it, how did it happen, should there have been stoplights there and there were not, was somebody speeding, should officers be more vigilant about speeding? If that's the case, you need to open up that discussion. Open up that discussion, ask a whole lot of questions, and yes, report the story. Unfortunately, somebody has died, somebody's son, brother, husband, whatever, but also go behind the scenes of that and delve into the cause of that accident and bring that to the public so that hopefully we don't see another one like that.
And if there's a way to prevent that from happening again, whether it's putting in stoplights, whether it's more patrols, the public has an ability to have that discussion and make that decision.
That's right. You put it in the public domain. You hope that the public, the readers, will pick up on it that, wait a minute, this could have been me, this could have been one of mine. You know, this must not, should not happen again. And help us to carry the torch, help us to champion the cause of perhaps another stoplight up there, or perhaps some
preventative measure.
Some preventative measure outside of the HLSCC Paraquita Bay campus.
We got to take a break for a word from our sponsors. I'll be right back with more Ms. Lynelle Abbott right after this word. Don't forget, coming up, we're also going to have the 3 contestants vying for the title of Miss Earth. We're going to be talking about their role in bringing awareness to environmental issues here in the territory. Keep it locked right at the Spotlight. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors.
Spotlight is brought to you by Virgin Island Motors, Tortola Concrete Limited, Bolo's High Tech Printery, and H. Lavity Stout Community College.
Welcome back to Spotlight. I'm here with Lynelle Abbott, former publisher of the BVI Beacon, talking about the role of the media in a democratic society. We want to go to the responsibility of the media. Now, we talk about we differentiated between the press, who are the news gatherers, and the media, that are the houses that employ the news gatherers, the press. And what is their role in the society, and their responsibility?
The media.
The media,
now,
yes.
Yeah, the media itself, who are sending out the press. Yeah. Primarily, first, I think, in keeping with what we spoke about before the break, first to turn out well-trained press people who understand their role and that of their media house and what it is and their responsibility to the public in gathering the news for the public. and don't necessarily have to have formal training. They can be trained right there on the job, but with good professional people, you know, to do the training and to guide them so that out in the field they can rely on their own judgment. Those members of the press then who are representing their media houses, they need an unshakable commitment to building and or upholding a sound reputation among the public that they serve. And that is done through strong journalistic ethics, the same we were talking about before. Solid professionalism, fierce adherence to the truth. You mentioned that in the code there. And fairness, balance, and accuracy, among other tenets of good journalism, namely reliability. In other words, the public must be able to rely on what they hear from the media house, what they read,
There's
what
the
they
element
see.
of trust.
The element of trust, but also they're building trust, they're building character. And, you know, because anything less than that is to play into the hands of the power brokers who, believe me or not, are raring to censor the press and to muzzle them in some way. You know, and out of that comes the forging of a path perhaps towards licensing the media, as they do already in some other parts of the world. That is to be avoided at all costs. Eduenka, as you well know, yeah? Mm-hmm. And if you want to know how serious it can get, witness the UK press scandals last year and the criminal proceedings with Rupert Murdoch's Empire, News Empire publications. Or even now, the brouhaha in Washington this week, if you've been following that, regarding the Justice Department obtaining 2 months of phone records of editors and reporters from the AP without the AP knowing. I mean, something like that cannot happen, must not happen in a democratic society, you know, but neither should an irresponsible press or media house give them reason to do that.
So, well, that is an interesting point because, you know, we discussing here censorship. For example, there's been an award, has been in the media for a couple of weeks now, and people in media houses talking about the government wanting to censor them and how unfair it is, and this is a democracy, and they should have freedom of speech. But it seems to me that in saying that, they don't think of or talk about their responsibility as media, and how they are playing into the hands, as you say, of those persons who would want to censor them because of their own irresponsibility.
So I think it behooves then, I think it falls then to still the media houses and the more responsible ones to keep impressing upon their staff, their press members, their role and their responsibility and the consequences to do otherwise.
Now, there's something that we call yellow journalism. What we hear the term used a lot. What is yellow journalism?
In a word, and I don't know if I could get sued for this, but some of the, I hate to use the word tabloids because, you know, we heard a lot about that in the House of Assembly not so long ago and some others. But I'm thinking of those shoppers that you might see in the supermarket. I mean, any given day you're checking out and you could see a screaming headline on one of those tabloids, yeah? And I'm always intrigued by the stories and would like to know how they got them. I mean, some really intimate stuff. You wonder if there's any truth to this. I think the last one I saw was Bill Clinton dying of perhaps AIDS or something like that. Really outrageous stuff, you know. But publications that go for that kind of sensationalism in the press,
Where a headline don't necessarily match up with a story, where it's outrageous, outlandish headlines. And
the headline is really to grab your attention. People like you and me out shopping, like I say, you're going by a grocery line very quickly, and the headline is all you have time to read.
And it grabs you.
And you don't really have time to read the paper, so you might buy the paper, heaven forbid. You might buy it and go out and then find that there really is nothing here to this story, just the headline. Now that, I think, is a classic example of your yellow journalism. Now I am disappointed when that happens, because of course it's so easy to paint us all with the same brush, and so I think the responsible media then have to lean on the less responsible ones, lest we all fall down with them.
But we don't have that kind of relationship with each other. I can't call up a media house and say, listen, your behavior is going to get all of us in trouble. And particularly in the BVI market, where the competition is so stiff for advertising dollars, how does that affect us?
Okay, I think you can't do that, because we do not have anything resembling the Society of Professional Journalists. We don't have any
professional
societies
organizations
or organizations, any such thing. So no, we are not. We are our own worst enemies. Really, we're not really helping each other that way. But still, we have to do what we can to uphold what we know to be the integrity of the profession, and we ourselves, I think, have to castigate them publicly. I mean, without seeming to be putting down your fellow journalists, but you just can't afford for the whole profession to be taken down by them, you know. So I think it's up to us, and it's also up to the public, and hopefully the public will become, or is becoming, a lot more sophisticated, and to the point where it will demand more or higher standards from the news media.
Because at the end of the day, it's us who's reading the stuff and who's making these various media houses successful.
We are the ones, indeed. Now, for example, the online news sites, they're a welcome addition to the mix here, but I think perhaps they do not adhere quite to the same standards that some of the established media houses do, and that can be a problem. It seems to me like they might be the ones who would sooner get us into the business of licensing, censorship or licensing the press. So I think perhaps we may have to, bite the bullet and sit down among ourselves and trash it out and see what it is we're trying to accomplish here. I mean, there's enough here to go around, and so I don't think it's not the same cutthroat situation as there is, say, in mainland USA, where they have to jump on the air with everything, anything regardless of whether they have all the facts. So we can, I think, perhaps come together as professionals and try to raise the standards voluntarily ourselves before anybody else outside has to do it.
Before we have to regulate
and
it.
in doing that, I think perhaps we would better educate the public. They'd become a lot more sophisticated, and the bloggers, I think, would improve as well, because some of that stuff just isn't worth reading. It isn't worth spending the time on unless you're just looking for dirt,
So, you say, in your view, final question, in your view, the role you see the media currently playing in our society was what? Good role, bad role, harmful role?
Well, the media, the role is good. You just simply cannot have a society, anything approaching a democratic society, without the media. I mean, any democratic society needs a vigorous press or media. But again, there are ways in which to accomplish that, and that is simply by taking the time out to train. Train properly and have respect for your public, know your profession, know what it is you are about, know your role in this society, what it is you want to accomplish, and not to bring down the profession or bring down the territory.
That's a good note to end. That's a perfect note to end, Ms. Lynette Abbott. Thank you very much for taking the time out. It was a real pleasure. I really appreciate you coming by and sharing your experience with us. And certainly, I hope you get to enjoy being in the spotlight.
Well, thank you for asking.
Certainly, I enjoyed the conversation. I'm sure it was very meaningful, and the audience listening, I believe, will enjoy it as well.
Well, more than enjoy, I hope they'll learn from it, and I really mean that we need to get together and see what we can do among ourselves as the press.
Thanks for being my guest on Spotlight.
Thanks for asking.
Yes. We're going to take a break for a word from our sponsors. When we come back, we're going to come back with three lovely young ladies, and we're going to have a conversation about their contestant for Miss Earth, BVI, and what that means, what the goal of that whole pageant is, and why have such a pageant, and how they are going to try to affect environmental protection and awareness in our community. Keep it locked right here to Spotlight. We're going to be right back after these words from our sponsors.
Spotlight is brought to you by the National Bank of the Virgin Islands, Clarence Thomas Limited, the BVI Tourist Board, and CCT Global Communications.